In this lesson, we will implement adding a new task. But first, let's start with changes to our template, specifically the sidebar. We are in To-Do app, Client, navigating to the Components, Layouts folder, and here we are interested in Nav, Menu, and we will want to display all tasks as the main page of our application. So, My Tasks, and here we can leave such a link. However, we want to have the option to add a new task in a separate tab. So here we will put Add and set the address as Task Add. This last link is no longer needed, so we can remove it. Similarly, for the weather and counter components, we can remove them, and home.razor can also be removed. Now we add a new razor component here, Task Add. Great, we immediately add a class with code behind, that is, with C# code, taskadd.razor.cs, and we mark this class as partial. We can start with the view. Let's set the URL of our page here. Page, task by add. Next, we'll set the title as add task. Similarly, the h1 header, add task. Inside, we'll have a simple form. So first, let's add a div with the class row and set the vertical margin to 4. Inside, we'll divide it so that the form isn't full width, but for example, half. Therefore, we set col6 here. And inside, we'll place our form, edit form. Now we want to add a model here. So private, add, task, command. And this model is from the shared project. Task equals new add, task, command. And we can set the deadline to datetime.now right away. And this will be our model. So model equals task. Next, the onValidSubmit event. We want the save method, which we'll create, to be called then. So private, void, save, super. We will enable data validation. So data, annotations, validator, validation, summary. And inside, there will be individual controls. Maybe as a reminder, I'll show you again what fields we have here. So we have the title, description, whether the task is completed, and the completion date. And we will set this photo in the next lessons, where I will show you file handling in Blazor. So let's go back to the view. Class form group. So there's nothing new here. The same as we did in the module dedicated to forms. First, let's add a div with the class form group and a top margin of 3. Inside, there will be a label with the value title. Let's add some classes here, meaning form label. For the title, we will use input text. We will bind the value to task title, and we will add the class form control here. Next, we will have the description. I will copy and paste this, and I will only change the description here and here as the bind, value task. Description. Additionally, instead of input, text, we will use input, text area, and set rows to 4, so that this control is a bit larger. Okay, and again, we copy to make it faster. Next, we have the checkbox is completed. Therefore, we need to change the order here. So first, we have a div with the class formCheck. This is how we do it for a checkbox. Next, we have an input, checkbox. Bind value from task is execute. And the class form, check-input. Great. And the label completed, class form, check label. Great. Next, we have completion date. So the date. Here we use input, date. Bind value from task term. Okay? And we still have the save button left. So form group, just like before, top margin 3. And here we can also make a smooth save. Therefore, we will need one more field. Private, bool, isLoading equals false. And when saving, we will set isLoading to true. And in finally, we will set it to false. I also added loading.gif to the www root folder. And now we will display it in the view. So if isLoading is set to true, we want to display a button that will have an image inside, which is our GIF. So loading.gif. And next to it will be a span with the text saving. Great. And let's add a few more classes to this button. Also, btn, btn primary, btn lg, and btn spinner. Let's also add the attribute disabled. And I need to add this class in app.cs as well, because we will be using it throughout the project. So I can add it in app.cs, and I don't need to create a dedicated CSS file in this case. However, if isLoading is set to false, we want to display a regular save button here. So button, save, I'll copy these classes to make it faster, just without btn spinner, and we can add another cancel button here, which will take us back to the main page when clicked, and we can create it as a link right away. Set href to main page and just change the class btn primary to secondary. this way. And basically, the view is ready. Now, let's go step by step, starting with the iTask repository. And let's add the method here that will be called when the save button is clicked. So I also want to have an add method. It will be an asynchronous method. So here I will return a task. And as a parameter, it will take add task command this way. Now I need to implement such a method in the task repository. So I can click on the task repository, implement interface, which adds such a method. I will mark it as asynchronous and it will have only one line. So I can use a shorthand notation here. And now I just call the post as JSON async method on our HTTP client, passing our endpoint, which is tasks, and the parameter I want to pass, which is add task command. So once again, I created a method in the task repository that calls the appropriate method on the HTTP client, which is located at the address we defined as the base address in program.cs, meaning we get the base address from the configuration, append API, and then append tasks. So in reality, the tasks controller method add will be called, which will add a new task to the database. So in this place, such an address will be called. First, we get the base address of our API from app settings. Next, in the CS program, I attach the API there, so something like this. And here I also attach tasks. And thanks to the fact that this is a post method, it is known that this method should be called from the task controller. Okay, now I go back to my component and C# code, so task add, and now I can use this repo here. That is iTask repository. I'll call it task repo. I want it to be injected into my component. And now, when saving data, I just call the appropriate method. So task repo add and pass my task field. That is the field that will be set on the form. Okay, if I want to call an asynchronous method here, the save method should be asynchronous. So async task. And here I just add the word await before calling this method. Great. And after saving, we can redirect the user to the main page. For this, we need a navigation manager. So navigation manager, navigate to /, which means we redirect to the main page. Besides that, we can also display a message using the toaster library. For example, we will display a message that a new task has been added. I have already shown you before how to use the toaster library. So now, to not prolong this recording, I will stop the recording for a moment. I will add the toaster service to my project, as we did earlier in the training, and we will refer back to the recording. Okay? In the meantime, I also added an interface and the toaster service and its implementation, so we can use it in our component. We will inject this service, just like we did before. And now we will display a toaster service message, show success message. A new task has been added, and that's basically it. So now we can check if it actually works. I am launching our application. We are on the main page. The main page is not working at the moment because I removed the component that leads to the main page. So everything is okay here. Now we go to the add view. We have add task, title, description, completed, and deadline. And we have our buttons. If I click save, we get validation errors. So let's add a first task. Let's make it implement a task management application. With the same description, mark it as not done and keep the deadline. Click save. We have a save button here where a spinner appears during saving. Then we get a message at the top saying that a new task has been added from the toaster service and we are redirected to the main page. So everything is working perfectly at this point. We can also verify, for example, on our Swagger, if we have any tasks in the database. We go to the get method, API, task. This should return all tasks. I click, try it out, and now execute. You can see that we have such a task in the database. We have ID1, title is executed, and deadline. So everything is fine. Everything has been correctly saved to the database. Now I invite you to the next lesson, where I will show you how to display this data from the database in our application.